So when you find that someone realizes that they have a problem with this, what do you find comes up for them, and how long? I guess it's different for everybody, but until they start to just go, okay, this is going to be my new norm.
I think a lot of anxiety will show up and a lot of guilt will show up because, sort of like we were saying before, what are you avoiding, or what is the perfectionistic tendency preventing you from feeling?
Right.
Right. And so typically I go really small and we do these kind of experiments together. So one experiment might be, okay, you're going to have an afternoon or maybe an hour where you just sit and do something pleasurable for yourself without being productive. That sounds very nice for some people. For a perfectionist, that sounds like hell. It's like,
Yeah.
do you mean you
Yeah.
want me to just not do it? You want me to not do anything for an hour? It's like, no, I just want you to focus on the process of enjoying, not the results that you're going to get from it. I think this is where we're doing some mindfulness work. We're doing some nervous system regulation work as well. So when you have the anxiety creep up, what can we do? Some breath work? Can we do a visualization? Can we do some body-based movements to help that kind of move through your system? And knowing that there is going to be something moving through your system because this is going to be uncomfortable. So, and that will come with any change, whether we're talking about sobriety or whether we're talking about reducing perfectionistic tendencies. There's going to be a wave that comes, and how do we ride the wave?
Welcome to Coming Into Focus. I am your host, Helen Tansey. If I were to ask you what you think perfectionism is, what would you say? I used to think that perfectionism was simply being a high achiever, an overachiever, a type A, or control-oriented. But it is so much more than that, and honestly, a lot more serious than I realized. This is why today's show is on perfectionism and women's mental health. So as I started doing research, I realized that perfectionism isn't just about wanting things perfect and shiny and polished. It's about the pressure that we place on ourselves, the fear of getting it wrong, and the belief that we need to perform at a certain level in order to feel worthy. So today I have Kristina Virro. She is a registered therapist and the owner of Fresh Insight, a mental health and wellness clinic. And she is going to lead us through what perfectionism really is and what are the signs, how it affects us mentally, physically, the impact on our relationships, and on ourselves. She's also going to share tools and strategies that we can use to navigate this. And I have to say, the more that I read about perfectionism, the more I not only saw parts of myself reflected in this, but also some of the women in my life. So I am really looking forward to this conversation. Let's get to the show. Kristina, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Yes, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Before we get into our conversation, do you mind just sharing with our listeners a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Yes. So I am a registered psychotherapist. I also own a health and wellness clinic in Markham called Fresh Insight. And then I also am a content creator on Instagram and TikTok. So you can follow me there as well if you wish. But that's me in a nutshell.
And I always love asking this question. How do you feel about aging? How do you feel about getting older?
I honestly struggle with getting older quite a bit. I find it
Oh,
hard. Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I think part of it was that I was in the acting, modeling, competitive dance world throughout, my whole young adult life. And a lot of that world was around beauty and being aesthetically pleasing and all of these things. So they were actually like quite conditioned into me. And then you start to see, little signs of aging, or, it's harder to lose weight like it was once upon a time when you were 20. And I just find it difficult. That's been a big part of my identity. So that's my very honest answer for you.
No, and I love that. I really, really appreciate that because I think everybody feels differently about it. And I think when we're honest with it, I think it helps people,
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. But I will be curious with getting into the conversation about perfectionism and women's health. I would love to go back to that question later on the show because I wonder how perfectionism affects women with aging also. So we can sort of go back to that. If I forget, please remind me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, will do.
Yeah. So, how do you define perfectionism?
Yes, a definition that I like is you have these excessively high standards for
Mm.
yourself or other people or both, and you pursue them in this really relentless way in order to basically feel acceptable as a human being.
So it's more than sort of just having high standards. It's like really high standards.
Yes, they're excessively high, and typically they're higher than the situation demands. So,
Okay.
for example, somebody who needs to send an email, but they are reviewing it and editing it, over and over and over before they send it. And it is just quite costly to the person as well. It's very, very stressful when things aren't feeling like they're perfect. So there's many components to it. It's interesting because research has talked about three different types of perfectionism. So one is self-oriented perfectionism, which is, I need to achieve so that I feel good about myself. And then you can have other oriented perfectionism, which is I need others to be perfect in order to feel good and okay. And then a third one is socially prescribed perfectionism, which is this idea that I think others expect me to be perfect. So I need to achieve that for approval or belonging or community. That's what the literature says about the three types. I personally believe that self-oriented perfectionism still comes from somewhere. I don't think you're kind of born with these tendencies. I think they're actually quite socially absorbed, also from early childhood experiences, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit too. But yeah.
Do you find that perfectionism, I mean, the studies are always changing. So when I was reading up on it and trying to do my research, it seems to be something right now that's stronger with women than it is men.
You're exactly right. There's a lot of different research about it. And this is what's hard about research sometimes is that you can find one study that says there's not really much of a difference in gender. And what's tough about studies is oftentimes they're self-reports, right? So you're
Mm,
asking somebody, do you think you're perfectionistic? And, a man might say, yes, I do, but he has a different set of standards of what would make him perfect versus a
right.
woman who might have, I'm going to say, likely a longer list of what she feels like she needs to accomplish to be perfect.
Yes.
Mhm.
Do you find that perfectionism, is it a double-edged sword? Because I know, like, for example, with sensitivity, it can be something that's so wonderful because you can be empathetic, you can understand, how people are feeling. But the other side of it is that you feel way too much and it can be challenging because you can sort of get sad maybe or go into depression because you're so sensitive. Is perfectionism
Mhm.
like that too?
I actually believe every personality trait and quality is a double edged sword, but for
Yeah.
sure, perfectionism, because I mean, perfectionists can achieve a lot of the time, and they can perform very well. I think the cost of it is the distress when they feel like they haven't met the standard, and also
Mhm.
just the pure exhaustion and disappointment that somebody chronically feels when they are a perfectionist,
Mm,
because it is a rigged game. Like you just will never be able to achieve perfection.
right.
And yet perfectionism will always have these sneaky ways of telling you that you can do it.
Yes.
So you're playing this game that's just a trap from the start, and which comes with, why am I not getting there? Why am I not getting there? I still didn't get to that standard. And just so much disappointment with that over and over and over.
Can somebody just have sort of tendencies to, like, if you're a perfectionist, is it in everything that you do, or is it just tendencies in certain areas of your life?
I think it can vary from person to person, but more often than not, I see that it is somewhat far reaching. Like it doesn't
Okay.
just hit one domain. I think if you're a perfectionist, you kind of have a certain lens of seeing the world, which
Okay.
is, what can be better, what can be improved upon, and how can I be the best at it? And
Mm.
I mean, if that is sort of the glasses through which you're seeing life, that will show up in work in just different ways. That might show up in your intimate relationships. It might show up in your friendships. So I think it's kind of like a worldview almost
Okay.
that you really need to tease apart, hopefully in therapy or with a friend or with yourself to break out of it.
And then you touched upon the root causes, and I'd love to go into that because I was reading an article that said perfectionism affects women more due to societal pressures to excel in all areas of life, gender bias and early conditioning often leading to anxiety, burnout, and chronic stress.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
from your experience, what do you find are the most common roots for perfectionism that you see in your practice?
Typically, I do see some early experiences that people who are perfectionists will have in common. So, some of those are one is a feeling that love was conditional in some
Mm,
way from your caregivers. And I want to emphasize that this was the feeling you had as a child. So maybe as an adult, you can look back and say, oh, I think my parents were just really stressed and yada, yada, yada. But as a child, you had a felt sense that you had to do something to get the love that
mm,
your parents had. And that could have been through academic success. It could have been through just being an unemotional child, whatever their definition of success was, you had to earn it
mhm.
through having these very, very high standards in some way. And there's some other things that literature tells us parents have in common. So, one is that they might be quite critical. So, the more critical parents are, the more likely you are to be a perfectionist.
Right.
Parents who are over controlling sometimes, parents who are maybe not very affectionate. And another one that I see a lot is when somebody is either the hero child or the golden child in their family. So the golden child is kind of the family favorite, even though it might not
Mhm,
be said out loud. And so they kind of have that badge and they need to uphold that standard of just
mhm,
being a great kid. And then the hero child is interesting. It's kind of the child who is very easy for the parents in the sense that they're very responsible, very competent, they take care of themselves, they're pretty independent. And so it's kind of like, well, we don't really need to worry about that one because they got it covered. And sometimes that's because other siblings have a lot going on, or maybe a parent has a lot going on. So the attention needs to be elsewhere. But for that hero child who is really used to just being not a problem,
mm.
you can imagine how that would show up as you go through teenage years, adulthood, of like, oh, I got it. Don't worry about me. I'm totally fine. And I think a lot of perfectionists actually have that in common.
Right. And do you find is there an age where you start to see that it presents itself?
It can start actually quite young.
Okay.
It can start through little subtle signs of, I need to redo something. You start making a note for school and, oh, I didn't like how it looks. And so I better start
Yeah.
over. Or, even just over preparing for exams or school assignments, being extremely disappointed if you didn't get the grade that you wanted to get. So
Yes.
I think it can actually start young in tiny little ways and then just magnify as the responsibilities of life grow as well.
I remember witnessing that a lot with, school, not with my boys, but with more of the young women where when they were studying for exams and
Mhm.
if they got, let's say, a 95, they were disappointed. And I'm like, "You
Mhm.
got a 95?" But
Right.
like, to me, that's amazing. But it was like this I found it more with young women that perfectionism and wanting to get the highest grade possible, and if they didn't, there was this huge disappointment and failure that they felt.
Yes, and even in my practice, it's not uncommon that I'll see women come in for therapy. And so I'm going to try to describe the woman for everybody. It's like
Mhm.
this gorgeous woman who is extremely put together. She's extremely articulate. She's very successful. She's living in a house that she bought, all of these little checklist things. And then she's there because she's saying, I just really want to improve and be better.
Mhm.
And you're even sitting there as a therapist thinking, what on earth needs to be better here? Like, but what you end up hearing is, and what becomes the target of therapy is the idea that they need to be better, right?
Right.
and dismantling that together and sort of saying, why do you think that you're not there yet? I mean, you have all these checklist items.
So how does it affect then a woman's self-worth?
Well, I mean, so sort of like we were talking about before, let's say you go through a day saying, how can I be perfect? And it's never happening. Then that is just going to erode your self-esteem day by day by day.
Mm.
And, I think the part of our society that contributes to this is this idea that women not only have to be good at a lot of things, but they have to do those things really gracefully and
Mm.
effortlessly. And by the way, make sure you're likable at the same time, because if you're too high achieving and you're too stubborn or you're too whatever, then we don't like you. And so, okay, now you haven't met that standard either. So it's so tough.
It is. It is. That's why I think, did you see the Barbie movie?
I did.
Yeah, that speech that she says, it's like, be pretty, but not too pretty, smart, but not too smart. And
Yes.
right. And it's a real juggling act sometimes as a woman.
Yes. And I remember when I saw that, it was a pretty full house in the theater and there was applause because
Yes.
every woman, I swear, resonated with that.
Yes, I agree. I agree. So, what about coping mechanisms? What is that? Because I know for myself that I have a friend of mine and he's a psychotherapist. And during COVID, we would reach out to each other once a week and do a check-in call. And he
Mm.
said, Helen, my husband and I were gaining weight. And I said, yeah, everybody is gaining weight right now. And he said, yeah. And he said, but part of it is me because I'm cooking a lot because that's my coping mechanism. And I was like,
Mm.
what? What do you mean? And he goes, well, that's how when I feel stressed or anxious, I cook. And then I realized my coping mechanism is cleaning. So I love to clean. I clean our house. If I get anxious or if I get stressed, I do it even more so. Um, is there a correlation with that and perfectionism?
Well, I think a really compassionate way to look at people's symptoms is to ask the question of how is this helping them in their life? Or what is the positive intention behind this behavior? And for a lot of perfectionists, I think what they're avoiding is vulnerability in a lot of ways. And so how perfectionism is a coping strategy is, okay, I really don't want people to see the not good bits of myself, the vulnerable bits. And so in order to avoid any of that disappointment from other people, in order to avoid any of that disappointment with myself, I am going to only present this really, really shiny version, really, really nice version. And so I think what perfectionism is helping us cope with is not feeling disappointed or ashamed. And a lot of perfectionists too, and this is something I've actually not really heard anybody talk about. I think they feel a lot of disgust with themselves. So it's deeper than just, and that's the difference between being high achieving and perfectionistic. Because if you're high achieving and maybe you don't reach the standard, you feel bad. A perfectionist will think, sometimes on a really bad day, I'm just disgusting. I'm a disgusting human being. Look at me. I'm not contributing anything. And it's so painful, right? It's not just disappointing. It's really all consuming in a way that really hits on their whole sense of self. And it's, I feel even sad just talking about it, just to imagine people who go through that.
Yeah. I definitely, though, my husband, if we, let's say, have someone who's in the neighborhood and they want to drop by, I right away go to like, but the house is a mess.
Hmm.
And he's like,
Hmm.
who cares? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I do. Or even if my friend, my kids would have friends over, I would quickly like, let's make sure the house is tidy. And I think for me, that comes from when I was growing up, we lived in subsidized housing and we didn't have a nice home. We didn't have nice furniture or anything. And so I think that's a little bit of a trigger for me of definitely how you're being perceived. But I
Hmm.
don't think that that's perfectionism because it's only like sort of a certain area.
Right, right. And perfectionism is sort of a little bit more far reaching, I would say, or
Right.
widespread in terms of the domains that it affects. And there's also perfectionism. Perfectionism is very fear based and it's also really rigid. And I also would say that there's kind of this compulsive nature to perfectionistic tendencies a little bit. It's so what I mean by that is like, it's not just, oh, I'd really prefer to go through that email a few times before I send it or whatever. It's like, no, I have to. And it's not just, oh, I'd really like to look good. It's like, if I don't look good, I am going to feel horrible. And so I must work out 5 days a week and it must be for 1 hour. And if it's
Yeah.
not, so it's the rigidity. And that, like I was saying with that definition at the beginning, it's the relentlessness of it.
Yes.
That's really tough.
And that it comes at I have somebody like that in my life where she's wonderful, but she works out consistently
Yeah.
and almost at a detriment to doing other things. Like,
Yes.
that's the priority. It's like and she does. She has an incredible body, but it's like it's almost like that she will not miss a workout, and she would change things around in order to get that in, and so it is interesting. It is a little bit of a it almost feels like a compulsion.
Exactly. And that's a really, really good example because if you were to say to somebody like that, actually, you can't work out today, somebody without this type of brain or personality or whatever we want to call it would just say, oh, okay, that's disappointing, but I'll just move on.
Mhm.
But somebody with this going on, if you say you can't work out today, it's like, what? That's a threat to the body. It's,
Yes.
it's like we are now in fight or flight because I can't do my workout. And I'm going to be so upset with that. And now I'm going to have a really hard time focusing on anything else because I have failed. I haven't done what I said I was going to do in this very particular way. My
Mm.
body's going to be crap. I'm going to be crap as a human. Right. So
Yes.
it's this whole domino effect from there.
So how does that affect the people around you? So if you're, let's say, a parent who's a perfectionist, how it's going to affect your children or even in relationships, like that's really challenging to be around.
Yes, I think a lot of the time it can come across as controlling
Yeah.
because it's like, okay, so let's use your example with the house. It's not just, oh, I'd like to clean the house. It's like we're all cleaning the house and because otherwise this is going to be very, very bad. And so other people can say, well, why do we need to do this right now? Why do we need to
Mm.
do this in this particular way? But I think it can also create strain in relationships because a perfectionist is not only maybe expecting the same degree of success, ambition, achievement from their partners or their family members,
Mhm.
but I've noticed that another kind of silent symptom with perfectionism is feeling resentful because a lot of perfectionists can say, well, I'm doing so much. Why aren't you able to do as much as I do? And
Right.
that is really fertile soil for resentment because you're saying, well, I woke up, I did a workout, and then I went grocery shopping, and then I cooked dinner for tonight, and then I went to work, and then I came home and I did a second workout. And all you did was go to work today.
So as you're saying that, I'm kind of feeling like it sounds also a little narcissistic.
I wouldn't say narcissistic. I think narcissism is more so about, you're very disconnected from others' experiences.
Okay.
You don't experience empathy. The world revolves around you in a way that creates problems for others. And I could see why you're saying what you're saying, but um, perfectionism isn't about I am better than everybody and that's why we're doing what we're doing. It's
Okay.
I have a lot of anxiety and the way that I need to calm that anxiety is through achievement. But it doesn't come with the other symptoms of narcissism. I think it's just can be difficult to be
Right.
around, you know?
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, no, and thank you for asking. Yeah, because like the feeling that you have around a narcissist, I think is like, oh my gosh, this person is insufferable and manipulative and controlling and
Mhm.
presenting a very curated version of themselves to meet in order to get something. And that's not really the flavor of a perfectionist. A perfectionist is usually just there's a lot of anxiety and shame as
Mm.
well.
I would actually just segueing, I would love to do a show with you on narcissism
Oh
'cause
gosh, yes.
yeah, I don't know much. I mean, I feel that it's one of those things now I hear a lot where somebody breaks up with someone like, "Oh, they were a narcissist."
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
but yeah, but I don't excuse me, I don't have a full understanding of it.
Mhm.
But I am fascinated by it, and I think that like a lot of terms, like that it's being a little bit misused.
Mhm.
But I would love to get you back and do an episode on that.
Absolutely. I've spoken about that before, and it's a very fascinating topic indeed. So
Yeah.
I will see you
Okay,
there.
good. Yeah. So what are the societal influences? How does that affect perfectionism? Because when you look at, Instagram or, even magazines, TV, everybody looks perfect.
Oh my gosh, yes. I think there's a lot of societal influences, and social media totally plays a role. I mean, one societal influence is right from the get go this focus on young girls being very responsible, agreeable, good, polished. And
Mm,
it's funny, I find that I twitch every time I'm talking to somebody and they say, "Oh, my boy is misbehaving, but boys will be boys." And every time I hear that, I twitch a bit because I think, oh, wouldn't that be nice to just be able to
yes.
say, oh, you're being because as anybody who's been socialized as a woman just hasn't really had that experience, right? It's more
Yes.
about, okay, let's keep you in a very particular box that meets a very particular set of standards. But another component of societal expectations here, I think, is around Western society's focus on productivity.
Mm,
And that really feeding into perfectionistic women's ideals as well. Because I mean, I remember there being this turning point where everything that I saw, and it's still going on, is about life hacks, doing things quicker, doing things more efficiently. And so if you take a woman who's already kind of looking at how do I be the best, how do I be the most productive, and now there's all this life hacking and being more productive, I think that also feeds into it. And to your point about social media, I mean, it used to be that you compared yourself to only the women in your circle or only the colleagues in your office. And it's about comparing yourself to the whole planet, the entire planet of people, which is really just wild if you actually sit and think about that, because I'm not comparing my own body or my looks to other therapists. I'm comparing them to other influencers whose entire careers around working out and
yeah.
being fit and eating clean. And that's amazing for them. But when I think that that's a normal person,
Yes.
that's so tough. And I really think we have lost sight of what is a normal looking human anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I have people in my life where I'll be speaking to them and they're like, "Oh, I'm having the worst day, blah, blah, blah." And then they do a post where they're smiling and isn't life wonderful? I'm like, wait a second.
Yes.
Yeah, but we are presenting ourselves as being perfect. And, whether it be on vacations or our children or our wardrobe or our homes, and, even though we know this somewhere, we must know this that, that's so curated, like it took them 20 takes to get that, or it's just not realistic.
Yes, and it's so true though, because we do not see the behind the scenes at all. We only see the
Yeah.
end product. And even for myself, I create content and I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I really like your content and you make it look so easy and all of these things." And I've always joked about how I really don't like making content in certain ways. Like if I didn't have a business and I weren't doing this, I just wouldn't be on social media at all. I
Same.
think that would be a blissful life for me. But, you live in this world where you have to be online and all of these things. And so it's just funny because, again, people are seeing my end product. They're not seeing the background stuff of like, oh man, I really just wish I could be off these apps.
Yes. No, I agree. I often say when I retire, I will be coming off social.
Oh, I will be right there with you. First thing I'm going to do. Yeah, it'll be very freeing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've even started with people saying, email me or text me because I'm actually trying not to go on social media as much. So
Yes.
with the same with you, with your business, people contact you. And because
Hmm.
I only try to go on once a day, if even that, you miss messages. So I even
Yes,
have it in the description, email me, but people don't. They still
totally.
continue messaging you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah. So what are the effects then on our emotional and mental health?
Oh, there's a lot. So, in terms of emotional health, like I said, a lot of disappointment in oneself, but also a lot of guilt. I
Mm,
notice a lot of guilt for relaxing guilt when you're not doing that workout that you said you were
Yeah.
going to do. So guilt is a really big experience for people. Also irritability, because you're constantly trying to achieve these things that you're not, or other people aren't meeting these standards. And I think at some point you could just feel so frustrated as
Right.
well with yourself or other people. From a physical standpoint, there's been interesting research by Dr. Gabor Mate. He's huge in
Yeah.
the therapy world.
I love him.
He's amazing. I mean, I just love him as well. And he's done research about how he talks about nearly 80% of autoimmune conditions affect women, and that there's a particular profile of woman that is more likely to get an autoimmune disorder. And he's shown that it's sort of women who can't really say no, or they have a hard time with that, or they put other people's needs first. And I believe that's probably true. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't done any of the research he's done, obviously, but just intuitively that feels right.
Mm.
And I think what ends up happening with perfectionists too is they reach this state of just pure exhaustion because
Yes.
it's running this uphill battle. And I actually think that that's probably where their autoimmune disorder gets diagnosed is
Yeah.
like right when I hit that moment of, oh my God, my body is failing me. My mind, I have no energy. I can't focus on anything. And they just hit this point of like, I can't do it. And I think a lot of perfectionists might need a little bit of grief work around that too,
Mm-hmm.
because it's actually quite painful and difficult to go your whole life thinking, well, I can get there and I can do it and I can achieve it. And then to
Mm-hmm.
realize that you can't, that's hard, and
Yes.
to kind of grieve that of like, I don't think this is going to happen for you. And to just sit in that place of pain, but acceptance. I think that's important.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about how there was a shift where women all of a sudden, you can do it all.
Yeah.
And we can't do it all.
Yeah.
But if we can't, we feel that we're failing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we all kind of contribute, in an ideal world, to a collective movement around this.
Yeah.
Because, maybe if I went to my friend's house and she hadn't cleaned it 100 times before I came, I would feel a little bit better
Yes.
about myself to not clean my house 100 times before she comes over. Or maybe if I can just be vulnerable about something. And it's actually kind of like at the start of the episode when you said, how do you feel about aging? And I'm not
Yeah.
going to lie, part of me immediately was like, oh, shoot, maybe I should tell her I feel really good about it because that's going to
Mm,
seem like the right answer.
yes.
But then I was like, actually, I don't feel good about it, Helen.
Yes.
But this
Yeah.
is what I mean about, being bold enough to risk sharing these sides of ourselves that maybe aren't perfect and,
Yeah.
the right answer all the time.
I agree. And that's why I think, Brene Brown, when she talks about the vulnerability,
Yes.
that's where our power is. And if we can be vulnerable, we're giving other people a gift too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is also a cost of perfectionism, is that I think it really prevents us from having honest relationships to a large degree
Mhm.
and authentic relationships. And it's funny, I've actually had a friend where every time we got together, it wasn't really anything deeper than this surface level,
Mm.
very good and polished version. And it really took away from the friendship because I would leave feeling like, okay, did I overshare? Because, I was wanting to talk
Yeah.
about some deeper things. And then also, does she not trust me to share? And also, you
Mm.
leave feeling like you were kind of at a business meeting rather than hanging out with a friend?
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
really eroded the friendship, if I'm honest, because that's not why I think we have friendships. We have friendships because we want a safe space to just be raw.
Yes. And I often say it's those beautiful me toos. So
Mm.
when you share something, if you say, I'm struggling with this, or even saying, I'm struggling with getting older, there's going to be someone who's going to be like, oh my God, thank God you said that. Me too. And
Yes.
we realize we're not alone with this.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that. The Me Too's. Yes. Now I hear Me Too and I think of something entirely different.
I know.
I like your version of Me Too.
Yeah. So if somebody is listening to this and they're thinking, oh my gosh, this is me, what are tools, what are things that they can do to sort of work through this perfectionism?
Yes. So, one thing, and this might seem kind of strange, but a really fruitful exercise I've done with people is to say, okay, we're going to talk about all of the pros and cons of the perfectionism.
Mhm.
Because really a lot of behaviors, but especially perfectionism, people really grip it because it's a big part of their identity, perhaps. But also, the problem is that it's probably been positively reinforced a lot in their
Right,
life. So, whenever
right.
they're perfect, I'm sure there's somebody that says, "Oh, you lost 5 pounds. You look amazing. Okay, let me
Yeah.
clock that. I should keep doing that." Or, "Oh, your house looks so good. I wish my house looked like that. Okay, let me clock that. I should keep doing that." So, there's a lot of positive reinforcement,
Yes.
very little conversation about what is this costing you? And to actually go pen and paper with yourself in a quiet room on a quiet day, write the pros, which are going to come out super easily probably, but then writing out the cons, because when you actually see them, it can help you realize, okay, this isn't all positive. And that can actually be a little bit of a motivator for change. So that's one thing I really like to do. A second thing is kind of what I call micro receiving or micro delegating. So, micro receiving is about you allow yourself to receive help that people are offering. Because if you're a perfectionist, it comes with this idea of I can do it all. It's fine. I don't want to be a burden. I'm good. I got it. I'm going to do it super well. I don't need anybody. So it's very hard to accept help and delegate it. So micro receiving is about if somebody gives you a compliment, you accept it. If somebody asks to take something off of your plate, you let them. If somebody offers to bring something like a salad for the dinner that you're hosting, you let them.
Yeah.
And then micro delegating, I think of this mostly in the context of intimate relationships with partners, because um, a lot of women will be doing it all in their relationship, and maybe their husband doesn't actually expect that. And so to say, okay, can you cook dinner tonight? And maybe your
Mm,
husband will say yes. You know,
right.
you have to risk asking to really feel that moment of, oh, okay, I actually didn't have to make dinner tonight. And I was creating this whole story in my head that I did.
So when women start to, first of all, I guess, realize that they have that lean, like that they're perfectionists,
Mhm.
what is sort of like, I'm going to give you an example. I'm not explaining this well. I apologize. For me, when I quit drinking, the first 2 weeks were hell, and then it started getting better. So when you find that someone realizes that they have a problem with this, what do you find comes up for them, and how long? I guess it's different for everybody, but until they start to just go, okay, this is going to be my new norm.
Oh, such a good question. I think a lot of anxiety will show up and a lot of guilt will show up.
Okay.
Because, sort of like we were saying before, what are you avoiding, or what is the perfectionistic tendency preventing you from feeling?
Right.
Right. And so typically I go really small and we do these kind of experiments together. So one experiment might be, okay, you're going to have an afternoon or maybe an hour where you just sit and do something pleasurable for yourself without being
Mhm.
productive. That sounds very nice for some people. For a perfectionist, that sounds like hell. It's like,
Yeah.
do you mean you
Yeah.
want me to just not do it? You want me to not do anything for an hour? It's like, no, I just want you to focus on the process of enjoying, not the results that you're going to get from it. So I think this is where we're doing some mindfulness work. We're doing some nervous system regulation work as well. So when you have the anxiety creep up, what can we do? Some breath work? Can we do a visualization? Can we do some body based movements to help that kind of move through your system? And knowing that there is going to be something moving through your system because this is going to be uncomfortable. So, and that will come with any change, whether we're talking about sobriety or whether we're talking about reducing perfectionistic tendencies. There's going to be a wave that comes, and how do we ride the wave?
Mm. It must be really beautiful witnessing the other side of it when you're working with some of your patients and seeing them make these breakthroughs, because it must open up so much for themselves, but also, their families or their partners or their kids.
Absolutely. I mean, when they can learn to do less, those standards on their partner probably are more reasonable, and so there might be more positivity in their relationship, right? And more
Yeah.
moments of joy. I also think once the irony is that perfectionism tells you you need me around to be more productive and more capable and more creative and all of those things. But I actually think that it erodes all of those things.
Hmm.
And when we can just allow ourselves to, dare to be average or good enough, then we're more creative and we feel more inspired. And we're probably more likely to put ourselves out of our comfort zone and pursue other opportunities, because a lot of perfectionists will avoid that because they don't want to
Hmm.
feel anything bad. They don't want to feel like they're not doing it well. Um, like I'll speak from my own experience, because I'm definitely somebody who's in recovery from perfectionism, let's just
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And I have been trying to learn French, as many people in my life know. And Helen, let me tell you how many times I've just cried because I don't like the feeling of being bad at something.
Yes.
So, I'm trying to speak it and then I'm getting frustrated and all these things. And it's a very difficult experience, right?
Yeah.
But if you can get through it and just say, I'm just going to allow myself to maybe sound a little stupid. And,
Yeah.
it's allowed me to, I went to France on a trip with my mom, and I've gone to Quebec to try to speak some French. And so my world has opened because I've allowed myself to feel kind of silly.
Yes.
And that's what's on the other side of it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still can't speak French, but whatever. That's beside the point.
It's hard. My husband speaks French, and I've tried, and he's like, just
Oh,
don't
it's
bother. It's hard.
good advice.
Good
Yes.
advi- And also, some people I think just have an ear for it.
Oh gosh, I do not. I do not.
Yeah.
Whoever, I'm jealous of those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I know when I speak French, I have an Italian accent for some reason.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Um, let's go back to the aging.
Sure. Yeah.
So I find that women, not all women, but a lot of women do struggle with aging. And I don't I don't know if it's necessarily perfectionism, but I know when you were saying earlier, like seeing those changes and we're comparing ourselves maybe to something that we used to be that we're not anymore,
Mhm.
or that if we are not aging well, um, which I don't even know what that means, but if we're
Mhm.
not aging well, that in some way we're failing.
Oh, exactly. 100%. And, speaking about social media and societal influences, what I've been finding hard is seeing these stunning women like Anne Hathaway or, Emma Stone. And there's been all these talks that they've been getting these facelifts and things like that. And so where you go, I don't know. That's not the point. But where I go internally is like, if Emma Stone needs a facelift,
Right.
whoa, like what on earth kind of work do I need? And my point is that when you see these already stunning women who are kind of representing the peak of beauty in Western culture, and then they're getting all this work to be better, it just makes it feel like, how are we ever going to be good enough? You know what I mean?
Mm, I do know what you mean, but it's all the exterior. That's the hard part,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's all the exterior. And I find I was, I had a guest on the show, Lori, and we were talking about how when I watch TV now, unless it's British shows, I find a lot of the American shows, I'm distracted. Like I feel that they don't look like themselves anymore. And if there's a sadness to it to me, there's a sadness that, in North America that we're so afraid of aging and that we're doing all these things to ourselves and then we're all just kind of starting to look the same.
Oh my gosh, totally. And what I think is really sad on that note is, in other cultures, what I really, really admire about them is the way that they associate aging with wisdom
Yes.
and things to be gained and learned. And I find that just completely absent from a lot of our conversations around aging, because, like you said, it's all about the exterior and it's never about, oh, that person must be quite wise and I want to learn from them.
Mm,
And I want to get to know their mind and their soul as they age,
yes.
and exterior stuff has nothing to do with it. But you're right. I mean, it's funny. Something I've thought about is that when I was growing up, I used to get told I looked like Britney Spears a lot, who was
Mm,
huge at the time. So it was a real compliment to me. And now, the look of what's beautiful is very different than what I am. It's like very, sharp features, cut jawbones, slanted eyes. I have all of the opposite of those things.
yeah,
And so then you also think, oh, well, am I not attractive anymore? And it's all about, it makes me think of how the standard is always changing. And if we're always trying to
yes,
meet it, it is kind of like perfectionism because it's this standard I'm never going to meet. It's a rigged game. So we
I
just
know.
need to kind of try our best to step out of it.
And it is a rigged game. Like,
Yeah.
God forbid we feel good about ourselves and we're not
Yeah.
going to buy products, we're not going to
Yeah.
shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting that because the things that we are doing when we're younger, like now for me, I'm going into next year be 60, and I wish that I had have taken care of myself better health-wise instead of
Mm.
just what I looked like, where it's like, 'cause I grew up, in that time where it was all about being skinny. Now it's about muscle and strength
Hmm.
that can carry us through as we age. So some of the things that we're doing now, I feel to be youthful or to fall into that perfect idea, is that going to cause harm for us later on in life? And even with all, the layers of, we don't know what the effects of this long term of Botox is or fillers are. And how is this going to look like? It might, like for me, like I used to lie in the sun because I
Yeah.
love the look of being tanned. And now I have, brown spots or I have to be careful. So it's like what we're doing now, it actually might not be the healthiest and best thing for us for later on in life.
Yeah, totally. I saw this interview with Emma Thompson once and it
God,
always
I
stuck.
love
Oh,
her.
and she has some amazing things about aging and
Yes.
beauty, and it's very refreshing. And she said something in an interview once that always stuck with me, which was that she realized pretty early in her career, I guess, that um, models and now influencers will say they are very good at doing what they're doing, which is to look beautiful, and that's hard work, and they're very good at it. So let that be their job and let me focus on being a good actress. And for me, I actually think about this all the time. When I'm spiraling in a certain way, I'll think, well, let me focus on being a good therapist or a good friend. And like you said, it kind of helps to twist it inward to the more important things in life and lead with what we value rather than what we look like, which
Yes.
is honestly an intentional practice for me that I have to do a lot to make sure I stay on the right path.
Yes. Yes. What about with all of this? I'm a huge journaler. I love
Mm.
journaling. Is that a practice that people can do?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of different prompts that you can get about different topics that I like to give people for journaling. I mean, one is journaling about the pros and cons that we talked
Yeah.
about. Also, sometimes it can be interesting to journal. So I'll explain what I mean in a minute, but journal from the part that you're struggling with. So, for example, you would write a journal entry as if you were speaking directly from the perfectionistic part of you. So the prompt might be, what do you want from me? And then the perfectionistic part would say, I want you to make everybody happy. I want you to succeed at everything.
Mm,
What is your biggest fear? And then you write from the perfectionistic part. My biggest fear is that I will actually get a lot of criticism from my dad or whatever it happens to be. So you're
mm.
actually really speaking from this place that you're struggling with. And it can really facilitate understanding and self compassion when you can get to know this part of yourself very, very well and know that it's not all bad either, right? Like I was
Yeah.
saying, it actually wants something for you. And when you can understand that, it's sometimes easier to be nicer to it.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Um, as we start to wrap up this conversation, I just wanted to invite you if there's something that you would like to leave with our listeners.
Something that somebody once told me, it was actually a patient of mine, and she was talking about, she was a writer, and she said she learned something from a mentor and this has always stuck with me as well, which was, if you want to ever make a character unlikable, make them perfect.
Oh,
And I found that so interesting, because I actually think that that is an interesting double-edged sword about perfectionism, is that
yes.
if the goal is to gain approval from others, it's like we were saying, it's the vulnerability that makes us likable. It's
Mhm.
the raw bits, it's the quirky bits that I think really draw people in.
Mm,
And so it's just something to think about, because I've actually always thought about that since she told me.
that's a good one.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's
was like,
interesting because I had a client and he just shared with me that, you know how people can use AI for photos now, and on
yes.
LinkedIn, a lot of people are using AI for their photo. And he was sharing with me that he read this article that if you use one of those photos, people aren't trusting you. Because right now, people don't know when they're looking at something like, is this AI or is this real? So it's causing them not to trust. So if you're putting an image out there that's AI and you're all perfect, subconsciously they're like, is that real? Is that really that person? And then it's feeling like they don't know if they can trust them.
Oh my gosh, that's so fascinating and very, like, completely understandable and related to what we were just talking about. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to have you back to actually want to have you back to talk about a lot of things,
I'd
but
love to.
I so enjoy your wisdom. I enjoy sort of the gentle way that you deliver it, and I've met you before and worked with you, and I just think you're such a beautiful soul. And thank you so much for sharing all of this wisdom.
Oh, thank you. And likewise, Helen, I think we always have had really nice conversations together, even during my photo shoot with you for my,
Yeah.
professional photos. We were getting in such good conversations, and that's completely mutual. So thank you for having me.
Oh, well, thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for being here. I'm grateful that you joined us today, and I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. Just take what resonates with you, leave what doesn't, and keep moving towards your truth. Until next time.